Namaskaram. Savarkar's petitions to the British authorities requesting for his release is often used by some part of the society as an element to defame him or prove that he was apologetic to the British. In 1923, Pandit Nehru was arrested and locked up in Nabha jail for joining a protest against the British in Patiala state. His influential father, Motilal Nehru, submitted an apology signed by Pandit Nehru, assuring that Nehru will never enter Patiala state again. Pandit Nehru was released within 12 days. Does that mean Pandit Nehru was apologetic to the British? A large number of students who participated in the freedom movement were suspended from their universities. They were readmitted after submitting a formal apology. Does that mean they were apologetic to the British? Government employees in British India who participated in the civil disobedience movement were reinstated after a mercy petition was filed. Does that mean they were apologetic to the British? Many of our national leaders at some point or the other worked closely with the British administration. Does that mean they were apologetic to the British? Gopalakrishna Gokhale played an important role along with the Viceroy Minto in the formation of Minto-Morley reforms. Does that mean Gokhale was apologetic to the British? The answers to these questions are a no. We must review Savarkar's petitions also in similar lines. My observations in this video are based on my initial study of Savarkar records available with National Archives. The records for the period 1913 till 1920. These records are more than 110 years old. So most of the prints have faded and they were very difficult to read. I could see 3 petitions from Savarkar to the British authorities written in 1914, 1917 and 1920. The first petition of 1914 and the last petition of 1920 are available with the National Archives. The petition of 1917 is missing. But we could make out the content and existence of this petition from the Legislative Council discussions of 1920, where all the 3 Savarkar's petitions were referred and discussed. The 3 petitions submitted by Savarkar were of similar nature from a content standpoint and his asks. Savarkar's petitions were typewritten by the jail authorities in Port Blair The typewritten letter had a provision to undersign, but they were not signed by Savarkar. So naturally, we can assume that Savarkar might not have seen the final copy before it was dispatched to the Home Department. Anti-Savarkar lobby terms these letters sometimes as mercy petitions and sometimes as apology letters. But both these terms are wrong usages. You will not see these two words in his petitions at all. It's not an apology letter because Savarkar was not apologetic about his revolutionary past in any part of the letter. We cannot as well call it as a mercy petition because mercy is part of the criminal justice system which a judge decides whether mercy has to be given or not. Savarkar's submissions were not to a court. His submissions were for the consideration of the Legislative Council of British India. So they are amnesties which an executive or a legislative body has to decide. The British records are also referring Savarkar's petitions as amnesty petitions. Amnesty petitions were a legitimate process available to all the political prisoners in the mainland India, like defending their case in the court. The option of amnesty for the political prisoners in the cellular jail was not there till 1913. It was introduced after a huge strike led by Savarkar against the inhuman treatment inside the jail and asking for a civilized behavior towards the prisoners from the British authorities. At the back of the strike by the revolutionaries, Sir Reginald H. Craddock from the British Home Department was appointed to visit the cellular jail. He had interviewed Savarkar and other revolutionaries and heard their grievances. As a result, political prisoners of cellular jail were also allowed to submit amnesties. This was the background of Savarkar's petitions. Savarkar's petitions were not personal petitions. He was the voice of the revolutionaries in the cellular jail. His petitions were for a general release of all the political prisoners, including him and his brother. Savarkar knew that he was considered as the most dangerous convict. So in his petition of 1914, he had mentioned that if you suspect my intentions, please don't release me, but release the rest of the revolutionaries. In the same petition, he had also offered to do volunteer service in the First World War if released from the jail. When we go through his 1920 petition, we see Savarkar thanking the British authorities for partly acknowledging his request by releasing the political prisoners transported for life. And in the same petition, he again requests the release of the remaining prisoners, including him and his brother. Now let us look at what was Britain's decision on his petitions. All the three petitions were rejected and nothing changed for Savarkar and his brother for 27 years. Savarkar was never formally informed about the rejections. The British decision was to informally inform him that it would be impossible to grant him and his brother the release. Let me summarize the reasons for the rejections from various British records. Reason number one. Savarkar brothers were regarded as the most dangerous political prisoners. Number two, British belief was that the justification that Savarkar presented in his petitions were entirely false. Number three, Britain had no doubt that the release of Savarkar will encourage the revolutionary movements in India. Number four, they doubted that Savarkar's intent was to take the advantage of Britain's situation in the First World War. Lastly, they thought that if released, Savarkar may join hands with Sikhs and pan-Islamist groups of Europe and revolt. Savarkar had no intention to be inside the prison. According to him, the primary duty of a revolutionary is to free himself first from the British and return to the freedom struggle for the service of the motherland. Savarkar also did not believe in satyagraha or fasting. When two of the revolutionaries in the cellular jail, Ashutosh Lahiri and Bhai Paramanand, were preparing for a fasting unto death, it was Savarkar who pulled them back from that idea. He told them that there is no point in giving up your life in Andaman. Satyagraha works where there is some rule of law. Satyagraha works if there is a democratic atmosphere. Satyagraha works if there is a possibility to invite political and public protest. Here, our masters will be pleased to see us die. Please don't please them. If at all you want to do something, somehow come out of the prison and harm the enemy as much as you can. By the time Savarkar was transferred back to the Yerwada jail in Pune, he had achieved significant prison reforms in the cellular jail. He set up a library, started educating the prisoners, stopped all forced religious conversions. It was because of Savarkar's effort the world outside came to know about the human rights violations that were happening inside the cellular jail. Savarkar's petitions were in fact human rights petitions. But do you know who abuses Savarkar for his human rights petitions? The same activists who advocate human rights for Ajmal Kasab, Afzal Guru, Yaqub Memon and other anti-national urban Naxals. Swatantraveer Savarkar, we salute you, sir. Pranam, Vande Mataram. Thank you so much.